Hey, y'all. Welcome to Cross Politic on the Fight Laugh Feast Network. It's good to be with you. We got a substitute here, okay? He's subbing in. He's subbing in for Pastor Toby. Yeah. We got Pastor Jared Longshore, Chuck Knox, I'm the water boy, and the guy, you know, Summer's dad is in the studio. Summer's dad. Yeah, James White. James White is in the studio. Yeah.
It'll come back.
And we have a full studio audience here, too.
Big studio audience. No kids, though. No one brought any kids. We do got a bun in the oven over there, don't we? Okay, I'm glad we do, because that would have been bad if I didn't.
Are we baptizing that bun in the oven once it's delivered?
We gotta have that conversation.
Okay, all right. I was just wondering.
They're buying us lunch afterwards, so you'd be nice.
Okay.
You'd be nice.
As long as James White's not there, then we can have this conversation.
You coming to the debate tonight?
Of course. Well, you mean today, this afternoon, whatever?
What?
This afternoon?
Yeah.
Can I say something real quick about the debate?
Yeah.
Isn't it an odd jump, though, to go just to talk about paedo communion?
Why not? It gives you a completely unique direction and a different light.
I like that.
I've done paedo baptism many times.
Yeah.
Okay. Was the last time you heard a debate on this subject between a Credo Baptist, covenantal Credo Baptist, and someone who holds paedo communion? Yeah. You've never heard it.
Never.
No.
First time ever.
So why not do something that could possibly give a little bit of a different perspective? We all know all of our arguments on the other side.
Yeah.
But you've never heard this, so why not?
So are you going to argue against paedo communion?
Well, actually, everyone, by the time the show is released, everyone will know what he's just arguing.
Taking the same side.
Well, that's what
we're going to be debating a ghost.
But here's the thing. Most Baptists, if they ever convert over to Presbyterianism, which is the gap, they're already consistent in thinking that paedo communion follows. So you're going to argue that it doesn't follow if you're Presbyterian.
No, I'm saying that. Specifically, when we talk about the Lord's Supper, it is an ordinance of the New Covenant. And
move that mic up closer to you.
And therefore, we have very, very clear biblical references as to what qualifies you to partake in that, much more so than in baptism. So you guys are trying to be consistent. I did a debate with an OPC minister, and people said afterwards, yeah, but they don't do paedo communion, so you need to debate somebody else. So I debated Greg Strawbridge.
Yeah.
The late Greg Strawbridge,
right.
Who, interestingly enough, did not actually believe that Doug practices paedo communion.
He didn't at the time of that debate?
No, in about 2021, he did a thing on paedo communion, and he said, yeah, he takes a more strict view and a younger person view. You know, because Doug's talking about there has to be at least, you know, the 1-year-old wants to partake type of a situation. He was talking strict intinction,
take eye droplet and
almost
squirt it in the baby's mouth.
Basic.
That Strawbridge White debate is online. It's on YouTube.
Oh, they all are. They all are.
Okay, this sounds like a third segment kind of thing. Let's get there. This episode is brought to you by Dime Payments. Dime Payments is a Christian-owned processing payment business. Every business needs a payment process system. I wish Toby was here to read this. So please go to dimepayments.com/FLF and sign up your business. Working with them supports us. They won't cancel you like Stripe canceled President Trump. Shame on them. They won't cancel you like MailChimp canceled the Babylon Bee. Shame on them. And check them out. At least have a phone call and tell them Cross Politics sent you. Go to dimepayments.com/FLF.
Go support the people who support us.
That's right. Yeah. The Florida anti-groomer bill, or as liberals want to call it, the Don't Say Gay bill. You remember that? You remember that? It's still going on. It's bringing out all the crazies now. Okay, it's getting crazier. And as a reminder, this bill never mentions the word gay and is actually kind of a silly bill in that it makes it illegal for public school teachers to talk about sex with K through third graders.
Fourth graders are ready, though.
Yeah. Well, they still have limitations on 4th through 6th, but specifically,
in that case.
We had to tell the liberals to chill out with talking about sex with first graders. That's but the crazy is not just limited to the liberals here. Here is Matthew Dowd, former chief strategist for the Bush-Cheney campaign during Easter week, talking about, I'm clicking the wrong button here, talking about the anti-groomer bill.
Easter holidays. And the Easter holidays, the entire message of the Gospels of the Easter holidays was love one another. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again. If Jesus Christ was alive today, he would be called a groomer, he would be called woke, and he would be called a socialist if he was alive today. If he was speaking the message he spoke in the Gospels today about treating everybody with dignity, Jesus Christ hung around with prostitutes and tax collectors. He was nailed to a cross because he spoke on behalf of the most marginalized people in the Middle East. And the idea that certain segment of our population has tried to capture the faith and corrupt a message that I may have been a follower of since I was baptized.
Yeah, seriously. It's hard to win. It's hard to win as conservatives when these are the kind of guys leading our conservative movement for the past 18 years.
Oof.
You know, seriously. But note something you might have already missed. He said, if Jesus was alive today.
Yeah, he is.
Which is tied to he made his mistake right up front, because he said the entire message of Easter is love one another.
Yeah.
No, wrong. That's why he doesn't know that Jesus is alive today. The entire message of Easter is that Jesus Christ rose from the dead.
Exactly. So he's alive, and lukewarm Christians like Matthew will answer for their effeminate, soft, gay theology that he just presented us. Now, you might be wondering why or how he connected the idea that Jesus would be called a groomer. Well, it appears, I'm speculating a little bit here, he was alluding to the text in Matthew where Jesus says, "Do not prohibit the little children from coming to me." And apparently making it illegal for a public school teacher to talk about sex with a first grader is prohibitive. But this is what you would call wonk theology, not woke, wonk theology, which is like woke theology, but for conservatives who have a deep desire to be liked and respected by liberals. That's wonk theology. He wants to be respected by liberals. We also call this cool shamming. And the reality is that Jesus, as Jesus would say, it would be better for him to have a great millstone fastened around his neck and to be drowned in the depth of the sea than to cause one of these little ones who believe in me to sin. And that's what he's doing.
I'm so busy watching James White put his head back together after it exploded from listening to that clip.
I had heard it, I had seen it, and you know, the only thing I had, I wasn't looking at the fact that he wasn't saying Jesus is alive. You don't expect these people they're not living in the reality that Jesus is alive. That's not a part of their everyday experience.
That's why he says that
so
stuff.
I'm not overly shocked by any of that stuff. But when I saw who he was and what he was associated with, look, as we look around today, what are we looking for? When we see changes, like right now, hey, there's been some pushback against woke stuff, and it's enough for us to sort of go, hey, that's sort of positive, that's sort of positive. You know what I'm looking for? I'm looking for the reasons why. If the reasons why are just, I want to have my comforts and my stuff, and I want to go quote unquote back to normal, that's not the right reason.
Yeah.
When I see people pushing back because they recognize that the worldview that has started this insanity is actually evil and destructive, okay, then I'm seeing progress being made. Yeah. But if it's just selfish, if it's just I want to be able to have lower gas prices and all the food that I want, that's not.
So you're saying leave it in the oven a little longer until you understand the foundations of the problem.
Well, I'm just looking at someone like this going, conservative?
Yeah.
We need to
100%.
really recognize that people who call themselves conservatives, unless they have a worldview that has some type of meaningful understanding of who we are as creatures of God, they're never going to be able to hold their position. They're just slow motion progressives. That's all. They're just going a little bit slower than us. That's all.
But the other side, though, is that we have conservative Christians who actually should be engaged in the world, who actually aren't using their worldview and applying it at all. So at least for this guy, he's at least taken his worldview, messed up theological worldview, and saying
theology
or shamming, which is like not shame, but okay. Anyway, and he's taking it. He's directly applying it to all of the issues. He's applying it to education. He's applying it to Disney. He's applying it to the government. And he's assuming something about his false Christ that it applies to the whole of the world. We can barely get Christians to be concerned about their own children and education. Yeah. And he's already involved in how the whole world operates based off his false theology. Doc, we need an overhaul on a theological worldview that applies to the world we're actually in, and not in one way or another, I guess, this dispensational idea that separates the gospel from the world that we actually live in. And so at least I know he's messed up and he's got some problems, but man, I would take a Christian that understands a little and knows how to apply that little to the world that we actually live in right now.
The thing is, he is on MSNBC. He's got a Texas hat on him.
That's no amen to him.
None of these things are to him. But I think kind of what we're seeing is a real failure of kind of your generation's conservative leadership. I mean, it's true.
It wasn't leadership. It was a full in. We bought into the myth of neutrality.
Yeah,
we believed.
Bonson tried to tell y'all.
Well, but this is before Bonson. I mean, I'm looking at how I was raised and how my parents were raised.
Yeah.
And there was very clearly within a fundamentalist mindset the myth of neutrality, that the government was over there, the government did what the government did, the government was going to leave us alone. We're going to be fine, and so the church just gets to be this spiritual place where we do our thing. We bought into it, and so when the sexual revolution starts, we won't even talk about it.
Yeah,
we won't even talk about it. I mean, I think about my grandparents, and they would absolutely turn over in their graves if they ever thought that we would have to have the conversations that I just did a presentation up in Magna, Utah, on my way up here.
Okay.
On male and female created he them, basically human sexuality. And I said at the start, I said the generations before us they'd have no grounds to even be able to understand why we'd be having this conversation.
Wow.
I mean, seriously,
Yeah.
They didn't even talk about it within the church. That was just you don't go there, or we're never going to need to go there.
Yeah.
And so we've been behind the 8 ball. We've been behind the curve trying to catch up for a long time.
I want to ask you about that. I want to talk to you
good.
about that because I have a question about that. You didn't know her name until after Monday when she ended the mask mandate on national transportation, federal transportation. That's Judge Catherine Kimball. Is it Maisel?
Mazzelli?
Don't ask Gabe.
Mazzelli? No.
The federal
She's
judge.
a Covenant graduate, by the way.
Well, okay, that's something good that comes from Covenant. The federal judge from Florida, seems like everything good is coming from Florida, right, Jerry? In her ruling,
Is that why they kicked him out?
He's no good anymore.
in her ruling, Judge Maisel adopted a narrow interpretation of the authority Congress granted to the CDC to issue rules aimed at preventing the interstate spread of communicable diseases. The law says that the agency may take such measures as it deems necessary and provide a list of examples like sanitation. The judge wrote that this power was limited to things like cleaning property, not requiring people to take hygienic steps. Quote, if Congress intended this definition, the power bestowed on the CDC would be breathtaking.
Yeah.
And it certainly would not be limited to the modest measures of sanitation like mask. If the government's broader interpretation of the agency's powers were accurate, she added, the CDC would require businesses to install air filtration systems, mandate the people would take vaccines, or even require, coughing into the elbow and taking daily vitamins.
That's funny.
And it's funny.
She said that in her argument?
That's what she said in her 59-page argument. Almost immediately, though, airlines, the TSA, and the whole transportation industry took off their mask and began to party. There's videos all over YouTube of this.
Yep.
The same people, by the way, who were yelling at you on flights to pull up your mask and kicking you off flights because your mask was below your nose. And they started taking all theirs off and they started tossing them into the trash immediately.
That's funny.
Think about this for a second.
Funny.
People went to the airport with a mask on, went through security with a mask on, boarded their flights with a mask on, and then they were mid-flight when they heard about this with their mask on, and pilots, they started crying. They were so happy that their faces were exposed again and they could see faces of other human beings. But I want to ask you, what's changed? Did the science change? Did COVID fall out of the sky and die at the moment that the judge said no more mask? Mid-flight, did the air purify itself upon the ruling of the Florida judge? It's amazing. We all wanted the mask off. We all knew that they didn't do anything at all. And we all knew that it was a power play. And we all went along with it.
Yep.
So here's the question that I want to ask. I think we need to pump our brakes and say, have we learned anything? Or what is it that we haven't learned
Did
yet?
you hear Fauci?
I heard Fauci,
No.
yeah.
What did he say? I didn't.
Fauci's response was the CDC needs to be given the authority by law to mandate these things so that we don't have to worry about politics anymore. We don't have to worry about laws. He says we need to be given absolute ultimate authority.
Do you think we've learned our lesson in such a way that because right now the government is trying to figure out, the Department of Justice is trying to figure out how to repeal this, right? So do you think that we've learned our lesson in such a way that if they repeal this, will we put our masks back on?
Do you think I'm still driving in an RV?
Yes, you are.
You know why? Because it's going to be back. Because nothing has changed. There's you know why this happened other than a Trump appointed judge?
Yeah.
November of 2022.
Yeah.
The people globally who are behind this push establish this totalitarian technocracy that is based upon making sure they got your bloodstream and they've got your identification. They know where you are at all times. They haven't given up.
Yeah.
They're just concerned about one thing. What happens if there is a huge lurch to the right in the elections in 2022 in America? We slow everything down for them globally.
Right.
So the Democrats know we are in deep trouble. You know, unless they can steal more elections really, really fast, they're in deep trouble. And so the idea is it's still 6 months out. How long is the collective memory of the American populace?
Not
it
long.
Ain't 6 months anymore.
Not long, nope.
So you take the pressure off for a few months, they forget about it, and the lurch to the right isn't nearly as far.
Right.
And then as soon as it's over with, you reconsolidate your position and you press forward. And the mandates in the future will not be masks. They will be the vaccine mandates, not just these mRNA vaccines and things like that. Isn't this what we were talking about the last time?
That you guys
we got into New World Order a little bit.
You're just trying to blame me for this.
We're not on YouTube anymore, so we can say
we talk about whatever.
That's what we did too.
We're spinning until May. So,
but right now, obviously, I don't know if you saw it, but there was a major. I think it was it Denmark did a major study on the mRNA vaccines. And the results in males, especially, of myocarditis, pericarditis, et cetera, et cetera. The documentation is getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. It's not going to make a bit of difference. Because this is how, once they have your bloodstream, they have you.
Yeah.
That's all there is to it. So everybody is like, oh, this is exciting. We're going to go back. So you're going to start flying again, right? And I'm like, nope.
Yeah.
Why not? Why not? Well, because it's temporary.
Wasn't it the World Economic Forum?
Yes.
One of their speakers,
Yuval Noah Harari.
He said that we've gotten the surveillance outside of the skin figured out. We want surveillance under the skin now.
If you haven't read Harari's works, I challenge you to do so. I'm working on them. There's over 40 hours in Audible, so I've been sort of busy doing other things. But do you know anything about this guy?
No, I don't. I just
Jewish. Atheist, homosexual.
Okay.
What a cocktail.
And what this man is literally saying, he's taking naturalism and Darwinism to its ultimate end. He's saying, look, we've gone as far as natural selection can take us because of our medicines now. We're allowing people who beforehand should have died, they're not dying as fast as they should have.
Right.
And so we're sort of short-circuiting natural selection. So the next step is genetic engineering, bioengineering, the ability to connect, and this is something Elon Musk is actually involved with too, the ability to connect your brain directly to the internet.
Yep.
And you know, we already, do you see the debate I did with the atheist, with the
Which
antifreeze?
one?
The antifreeze.
No. Oh, yeah.
The
I remember,
antifreeze guy.
I remember that.
He is a doctor. He developed what they call the Luke hand, where it's a hand that your brain controls and you can feel with it. You can change, like if this was an egg, you'd have to be pick it up very,
Softer
very
touch.
carefully. If it's a brick, then you harder. You can do all that with your mind now.
Wow.
Okay, mechanically. So you ramp that up and make it bigger. And he's saying we have to hack human beings.
Wow.
And his whole thing is it needs to be intelligent design, not some god above the clouds that doesn't exist.
Right.
But we need to intelligently design the next superhumans, and that's going to be the next step. His last book, I think, was called Deus Homo, the God Man. And this is the chief scientific advisor
for the World Economic
Forum.
That's right.
So we got some bigger lessons to learn before we even start talking about masks. Jared, last word on this.
Well, it's all fruit. So you're right, nothing has changed. I mean, I thought for a moment when they made the announcement, maybe the virus died. I thought you asked what changed, man. I think at the minute they decreed, the virus died, right? Well, that does map on to the way that we think. So we're secular humanists. So man controls reality. Man has announced to you that you're free and clear. So take off your mask. But as James said, they're probably going to turn that around and tell you to put it back on in a minute. So you might want to buy a trailer.
It's absolutely.
That's right.
We're all going to be living in trailers now.
And if you need any advice, just give me a call.
Oh man!
It was never about the science. It's all about the compliance. And watching everybody yank off their masks, it's just like you're just complying.
I don't like you people. I want hope. I want us to learn some lessons, and
Let's
I want
get
us
there.
not to repeat
Let's
that.
get there.
You want hope? it's like what I just said. When people start resisting because they have the right reasons for resisting, not just I don't like it, but because I recognize what you're doing to me, and I recognize what you're going to do to my kids and to my grandkids.
Hold on, wait, we'll
There you
talk
go.
about that next on Cross Politic. Can the gospel save America?
Home. It's where you build your legacy, where traditions are started, seeds are planted, meals are shared, and stories are told. We are Chris and Natalie Carpenter, owners of Story Real Estate, and our team of top agents helps people find homes in Moscow, Idaho, and around the country.
Have you thought about a move? Contact us to get connected with a top agent who shares your values and puts your family first. Or reach out to us about our Moscow relocation guide.
Wherever you're looking to go, we can help you find home. Call us at Story Real Estate or visit us at storyrealestate.com and start building your legacy.
Welcome back to Cross Politic. I always feel weird doing like Knox's or Toby's job. It's Toby's job to
This is
welcome everybody
Toby's
back.
job.
This is Toby's job. I don't like it. But hey, we're going to be in Arizona on May 19th with Pastor Jeff Durbin and Delano Squires.
Yes.
The last stop in our Liberty Tour, May 19th.
Yep.
You go to fightlaughfeast.com, click on the shop button to sign up. And you may even be able to get to hang out with James White if James comes and fellowships with us at our pre-event and other stuff that we got going on. May 19th, you're invited. You're invited. I'm
Go
invited.
baptize your kids if you have children.
He can't hear that.
I don't even
He can't
know.
hear
I
that.
can hear it.
Oh, he
Well, you
does?
can't. Well, that's right. You got stuff stuck
Yeah,
in
we
your
got,
ears.
yeah.
I can hear it.
That button just hit itself.
It sure did.
That's funny. He
It
did.
evolved.
He did hear it. This segment is brought to you by our national conference. It's going to be in Knoxville, Tennessee, October 6th to the 8th. The theme of this year's conference is lies, propaganda, storytelling, straight edge, everything that Dr. White's getting at. Mark your calendars for October 6th through 8th as we fight, laugh, and feast with fellowship, beer, and psalms. Can Baptist do that with us? Our amazing lineup of speakers, hanging with our awesome vendors, meet new friends, and more. Early bird tickets are on sale until June 1st. Club members, you get a $100 discount off, so make sure you join the club and you get that discount. You can go to fightlaughfeast.com. Again, click on shop, find the conference, and sign up. We'll see you there. Knoxville.
Yeah, Doc, so here's one of the things that you said in the first segment. I wrote it down because I didn't want to lose it. When we were talking about that, Gabe said, hey, our forefathers, y'all got us here. And you said, well, it started before Bonson. And you said there was this divide between us that we felt like we can do our thing over here with Christian and the government would do its thing and we'd be fine. And those two would kind of go simultaneously together. It would work. My question was, why was it that they abdicated the authority of Christ to the federal government or to the civil magistrate? Why was it that their rule, they didn't have a concept that God's rule applied to the civil magistrate? They didn't have a concept that the gospel was broader than just salvation? What?
Have you ever read the Fundamentals, from which the term fundamentalism comes from?
I don't think I have, no.
Okay, they're a series of tracts written in response to the rise of liberalism in the United States. And there's always been liberal movements, but especially mainstream denominations heading to the left. And what happened in the fundamentalist movement was a reaction against that. And part of what they saw in liberalism was a form of postmillennialism.
Yeah, a flawed form.
A flawed form,
Yeah.
an unbiblical form.
With no gospel.
A disconnected form.
Yeah.
But that's what they saw.
Yeah.
And so they retreated back in reaction. Fundamentalism is fearful reaction to what you don't understand or what challenges problems in your own theology. Okay? And so they saw these people talking about Christ and the culture, stuff like that, and then they're not changing hearts. They're not bringing the full gospel to bear, et cetera, et cetera. And so there's a drawing back, and that's the world. We're not a part of that. We're in the church, and the gospel becomes completely spiritual.
Yeah.
And so that was what my parents were raised with, and that's what I was raised with because that's what they were raised with. And now we know, that was the myth of neutrality. It really fundamentally undercuts the application of the entirety of what authority did Christ have? Well, it's all in heaven,
Right.
and whatever authority you give him by making him Lord of your life type of
Right.
situation. But yeah, my generation, we were getting along with the world. We had, I lived during Ron Reagan's years, man.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And wow, it was
Flying high.
It was great. The government's never gonna have any. We're not gonna have any problems with the government and the church. We're good. We just need to focus on our little things. And we lived in the myth of neutrality, and now we're paying for it.
What you just described there was a Gnostic gospel.
In the sense that it is spiritual without application to the real world, yes. I have to deal with Gnosticism a lot, so I have to be a little bit more careful as to the exact definitions of it, because if we started talking about that right now, your eyes would roll.
Yeah.
I mean, real Gnosticism will actually make your brains melt out of your ears. It's just amazing stuff. We tend to use the term of anything that's somewhat dualistic, where we separate God's creation physically and
From the spiritual.
From the spiritual. The Gnostics did that, but they did it for a whole lot of really weird reasons.
But here's a little bit of the trouble with what you said, James, because when I think back to that generation, and then I think about what has happened really in the last 3 years with COVID, with Black Lives Matter riots, all of that, and then the conservative evangelical response to that, even the conservative reformed evangelical response to that, I'm suspicious that we actually still have the same convictions that we did back in the generation that you're talking about, because the defense that happened was, you have now told me at my church that I have to wear a mask. You have now told us at our church that we can't do this or that, and that's when people bucked up. People bucked up when they said, "You're not going to come into the house of the Lord and tell us you have to do this or that." And you can still say that, operating on the same principles you talked about, because it's not the lordship of Christ over the whole lot. It's just the lordship of Christ over my church, and you can still have the myth of neutrality. So in here, in the church, it's not neutral. In my soul, it's not neutral. In heaven, it's not neutral. But on earth, outside of the church, and corporately, you can still buy into the myth of neutrality and kick hard when the government comes to tyrannize you and your local body. And the trouble is, it's like the mask thing from the last segment. We're on the back end of it now. I think it is dying down. I think it's going to fluff up again, praise the Lord, because you actually want it to fluff up. You don't want it, because then you know where people stand. And we're on the back end of it now, and I think there's a lot of conservative evangelicals that say, look, we've stood really firm. But I'm like, I think you actually still have the same convictions. You haven't actually learned your lesson.
You don't think it's been cleaned down? I'm sorry, what were you going to say, Doc?
No, it's right. That's what I was saying. I'm looking for the telltale signs that even the big names that, you know, we'll hear them say things on social media and we're like, yeah, great. But then you dig in a little bit farther and you realize they don't have the right motivations for what they're saying. And that means when the pressure comes back, they're not going to be standing firm.
Like Elon Musk buying Twitter, and everybody's praising it, right?
I would love to see Elon Musk buy Twitter just for the fun.
Yeah, I mean,
exploding
just
heads
for the sport,
is very
just for the sport.
You know, Doc, for me, I think about it like I want the feminist movement to have a fight with the trans movement, and I want them to have but not enough. Not enough. I want them to completely go at it and destroy each other.
Have you talked to J.K. Rowling recently? Because she would tell canceled. We're doing the fighting. No. The way the feminists fight Christians and the way they're fighting the trans movement has been two different ways.
Yeah, that's right.
And so I want to see them fight the trans movement the way that they've been fighting the patriarchy.
Yeah.
And so when they do that, then I'm gonna be like, okay, way to go. They ain't took off the gloves yet and decided to fight in the same way. So that's how I look at Elon Musk and Twitter. I'm like, you know what? Y'all have at it. But what's bothered me though is that I've seen the evangelical church or Christians be like, yay, free speech. And it's like, you know that this will be a curse to you, right? A person that praises free speech apart from the God who gives you free speech, the blessing that you want, if you make that the God, that becomes the curse, right? And so you have to have an objective standard beyond that for you to get the very thing that you think you want, right? And I love how Ben Merkle says it. The thing that you have, the thing that you want, you need to sacrifice it on the altar. And it's amazing how many times over and over God gives you that thing back better than you even thought he could, right? And so that's what we need to do. So here's a question I have right now, because we know what the mess is. Now let's put the gospel in the machine and let's model out what does it look like for the gospel to actually operate in the current situation we're in, and how does it get inside of the loaf to start changing because look, the church and the home are the culture builders, mainly the home. And the church is the moral objective standard of what God requires, teaches man, they teach their families, and it bleeds out. And how do we get the right thing inside of the family, inside of the church, so that we start seeing the landscape a little different and it starts changing the world that we're in? Or can we do that?
Well, you know, one thing that has happened that has really encouraged me actually is the massive growth in homeschooling. Because what has been the most effective way of utterly decimating the family and the next generation in its ability to think critically and everything else has been the public education system. I mean, that we just handed our children over to Caesar and he turned them into the pagan Romans that we expected him to do it. And so the huge growth. I mean, an entire homeschool curriculum center has opened up right next to my office, and I'm watching these families coming in and out day and all during the day, and I'm going, man, there are a lot of people that are really doing this. They're going for it, and that's in the family. That's at that level where you can start. And look, most of them are Christians, but not all of them are.
Yeah.
But once you get them out of that constant exposure to the insanity that you are an accident, you are not created by God, you are an accident, you have no intrinsic meaning. You're just a ugly bag of mostly water is my Star Trek favorite line along those lines. Moist robots, whatever terminology you want to use, stardust, all the rest of that stuff. That's what they're being told. So I don't know if you saw the what's the black lady that everybody loves to hate right now? She's a conservative. Candace Owens. Candace Owens, thank you. Yeah. Candace Owens was in California talking about the bill that I don't know if they've passed.
Infanticide bill.
Infanticide. And these people are going, well, yeah, that makes sense. One guy's going, I think you should be up to 10 months.
Yeah.
You should have up to 10 months to
that.
kill your kid and stuff like that. And we're looking at that just going, how do you get that turned over to your sin? We're looking at those people just going, and need to realize, but for the grace of God, go we. But we're looking at that, and we're wondering, how did that happen and happen so quickly? It happened through the educational system. And so if we can get back to where we are now proclaiming to families, teach your children about their intrinsic worth, who they are, who made them, then you've got a basis for talking about what our responsibility for God is. But right now, you talk to anybody in our world, how can you talk to them about the authority of God's law if there is no lawgiver? Mm-hmm. How can you use Jesus' clear teaching in Matthew chapter 19 that we are made male and female if the first words Jesus says is the creator from the beginning made? There's no creator anymore.
Right.
You've got to start down there at that level.
At pantheism or paganism, where there is no creator, there's no distinction between creator and creature, is a huge problem. And then in addition to that, you've worded this segment well by saying, can the gospel save America? I think if you were to line up all of the conservative Reformed evangelicals even that chafed under the mask mandates, that perhaps even threw down on the mat and have had their ministries really flourish because of their strong stand. Yeah. And you put that question on the test. That's the question. Can the gospel save America? That's one question on the test. The other question is, can the gospel save individuals? 100% of them are going to answer yes to the gospel can save individuals. But there's going to be a significant portion of them that say, what do you mean?
Why does America? Who is America? Why do it need saving?
What do you mean saving nations? What do you mean baptizing nations? What do you mean discipling nations? What do you mean? This sounds like maybe 500 Club stuff. This sounds like maybe this. They're gonna
500,
700 Club.
700 Club. Who's the
Robertson?
Who's the old school people that thought we're gonna really do great? That nobody remembers.
Right. Yeah.
Evidenced by my statement.
700 Club. I thought maybe they're
Pat
going
Robertson
off or something.
There you go. Yeah. They're gonna think. Or they might think. Who's the guy in Texas with the big Baptist church? Yeah, Jeffries. Actually had a song, "Make America Great Again," sung by the choir,
right?
With the American
with all the flags. Yeah.
There's going to a lot of people going that way. There's going to be instincts that are individualistic and that have that latent Gnosticism, or hey, physical things are bad, and you can't be talking about the gospel actually saving America, and that doctrinal reason is why we're in the mess we're in. Why we're going to keep being in the mess that we're in. The pulpit leads the world, is what Melville said. And if your ministers are not clear on the gospel of Jesus Christ and what it does, and any temptation to talk, any way of talking about it as saving America, they're going to feel like there's a threat to it saving individuals.
Let me throw a hand grenade into the middle.
Ooh, I like those.
Do it.
Well, look, I chafe a little bit at can the gospel save America, as if America has some standing more than Canada or Mexico or Sweden or anything else.
Like manifest destiny kind of thing.
The question should be, can the gospel save any repentant nation? And the answer is yes. But really, I step back and I go, can I think of any nation, maybe England comes close, that has had as much light as we have? And would there be just absolute massive justice If God says, you had that much light, look at how you've turned and spit in my face.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to make a monument in history. I've been to Rome. Ever been to Rome?
Yeah, no.
Okay. Go to Rome. Look at the Colosseum. Look where they used to kill the Christians.
Yeah.
Okay. It's a, Italy's had how many governments just since World War II? It's not Rome anymore. Okay.
Right.
That entire massive system is gone and dead.
Yeah.
And we can look back and go, there's the ruins.
Right.
Would the victorious power of the gospel in any way be diminished if God justly punished those nations to whom he has given such blessing and such light, and then he wipes them out because they embraced what, Doug and I were talking about this yesterday. I cannot think of a greater enemy to who Christ was historically, is today, what he taught, what he stood for, than secular humanism. Even the Romans at least believed there was a God.
Right.
But we have gotten to the point where, with this Harari fellow, we are denying not only the creator, but our own created status, and think we ourselves are gods.
Right.
And so if every enemy has to be put under his feet, what's it going to look like when this enemy is put under his feet? Could that not be something that we look back on for generations and go, we'll never go that direction again because we saw what happened?
Yeah.
But, one of the things that I look at, and this is why maybe I'm a little optimistic about this, is I look through the trajectory of American history and where we've been at. We've been in some bad places because we act like, oh my goodness, we just got bad. Like, we've been in some pretty bad places throughout American history. And even before, when we were still a colony out here from England, we've had some massive moral failures. And at the same time, God has been very kind to us and bring us to a point of revival, and even bring us back to a place where, okay, we mature and develop, right, out of that. And it's only been because of the gospel, or a correction of the gospel, or a revival will break out outside of the church because the church is wonky, fixes it, and the revival comes back into the church, and we put the fire back in the right place. I don't think that we're past that point yet. I don't think that we're past the point that if the church would do some of the more basic things, that God would hear from his people and heal their land. I believe that's a reality still here in America at this current point. My problem isn't so much that the world is acting crazy out there. It's that we refuse to believe something about the gospel in here. I think we're the faithless ones in the church. So we don't actually believe that the gospel is actually going to do what it says it's going to do. So then we separate ourselves from engaging it in the world.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
but here's an important point, an important distinction. This is.
Well, I feel like I'm dealing with both of y'all right now. I feel like I got to fight both of
You
y'all
should.
right now.
No. I'm clarifying what you said. What you said is dead right. But what some people are going to say, the question is not, will the gospel save America? The question was, can the gospel save America? Because we're not saying that you need to believe that God is actually going to providentially, by God's eternal decree, turn America around. Right. We're not asking that. We're not making that question. We're not saying you have to sign on to that. What we are saying you have to sign on to is the fact that God so loved the world that he gave his only son, that the Son of Man did not come to condemn the world, but that the world might be saved through him. Mm-hmm. We're talking about something about the proclamation of the gospel, God's gospel, the creator of the world, God's gospel to mankind, that sinners would be saved, that the knowledge of the Lord would cover the earth as the waters cover the sea. Mm-hmm. We're talking about the eschatological hope that is associated with God's gospel, with the gospel of his son.
That's a very important part.
And so people are going to get hung up and say, well, you're asking me to know God's future plan for a distinct nation, like James was talking about. As James made that distinction, it's very true. Because we have to show where the problem really is. The problem is not that you won't believe that God's going to do something in America in 30 years. No, the problem is that you actually don't believe that the gospel saves the nations, that it operates in that way. You don't believe the very Great Commission that begins with Jesus having all authority in heaven and on earth.
Right.
Hit one of your buttons like amen, Oregon.
Once you touch buttons, I just
pass
go,
the
hey,
offering
man.
plate.
I saw it.
The man's touching the buttons, so everybody
gets quiet at that point. So maybe the thing to talk about is the last 3 years we've had a problem between COVID, between the social justice movement. What have we learned, and what do we need to know before we engage to bring the gospel to bear on our situation? More Cross Politics coming up next.
Hi, I'm Robert Borton, CEO of Classical Conversations. Our most precious commodity is time. No one has ever lied on their deathbed wishing they had spent more time making money. They all wish they had spent more time creating a legacy. Our modern education system steals that legacy, steals that time from our children. That's why I'm passionate about homeschooling. That's why at Classical Conversations we want to give you more time to create that legacy, follow your passions, and glorify God. Visit classicalconversations.com for more information.
We're just getting right into it.
Toby's not here, so I got to read his ad.
I know.
I don't like reading ads.
Toby's so good at this. I don't like it either.
Yeah, we should make Jared or Dr. White do
we
it.
should.
So I think we
Is
need
it,
to
is it over
pump.
there?
No, it's not.
It's right here. You want to read it?
I should have.
Here.
I should have. This show's brought to you by. Here you go. This is a good one.
Do it.
This is great.
You like this one. So just
Are we on the dividing line right now? Are we on the dividing line?
I don't do. But remember, I grew up doing
He's
radio.
big time. He doesn't need sponsors on this show.
Yeah, he doesn't need all this.
He is the one.
He goes straight to camera is what he does.
Accountable to you, huh? Okay, all right. So just
just
run
read
through
that
it.
text. Yeah.
All right, you ready?
Yeah.
We good? All right. Using a smartphone or computer opens the door to a host of digital
This
temptations.
is
Isn't
phenomenal.
it true?
Wow,
This
James
is
is so much
great.
better at
You're
this than
killing
you
it.
guys.
Temptations. In a world saturated with pornography and other harmful content, what's a Christian to do?
I don't know.
We need to take a proactive approach because you've taught me to do this, okay? Welcoming transparency in our digital media choices. And you know what? Accountable to you makes it easy. And
Yep.
you need it to be easy.
That's right.
You really do.
There you go.
Their accountability software shares detailed activity reports from all of your devices. And here's the important part. Your kids' devices, if you give your kids devices. That's a key issue right there. In real time to the accountability partners that you choose, not that they choose for you. With accountability in place, your family can effectively guard against temptations online and live with purity and integrity. Learn more, try it free at Accountable to You. It's the number 2, not TW. It's accountable2u.com/FLF in all capitals.
Man.
I think Pastor Toby just lost his job.
Yep, he did.
That
Did it?
round of
Can you
applause.
clap? Yeah, there you
That
go.
was awesome.
That well done.
You know you only have 20% left on your battery. So you
Well, yeah, and you're looking out for my look, Doc. You all right?
I love you, brother.
You all right. You all right.
You know I love you.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So I think in the first segment we were kind of talking about can the gospel save America? But really,
That's
I think
the second segment, actually.
that's yeah. But really, it's can the gospel save the church? These last 2-3 years have been has woken up a lot of people. Been crazy. You've kind of seen a new division in Big Eva. Before there were certain friends that were tighter than they were, and
You saw that breakup right at the what was it? The
Johnny Mack letter.
No, it wasn't the letter. It wasn't the statement on social justice and the gospel. It was when
They released their statement.
Shepherd conference happened. Yeah, my brother's like, he knows what I'm trying to get at. Yeah, were you there for that? Okay, so the Shepherd conference happens, and you see all of a sudden guys who have been friends for 20 years. You see an earthquake happen right there in front of your face.
Yeah. T4G just finished its last conference.
Yeah.
Like yesterday, 2 days ago.
And so, I think part of this is what do you think we've learned the last 2-3 years?
Who's we? Who's we? I mean,
Define the
seriously,
plural.
because unfortunately, it depends on who you ask and how they're going to divide the circle as to what we.
I
have
want to
Can
start
I
here.
say who we? I want to know who
Okay,
he is. I want to define the community. I want to say Calvinistic, Reformed, conservative evangelicals.
Actually,
That's the honey spot. That is where you want to be.
So when you say conservative, you would include in that a strong emphasis upon sola scriptura and the sufficiency of Scripture, because unfortunately, that is a dividing line these days.
wow.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm going to ask this question: what have you learned, Dr. White, these last couple years in relationship to the church, government, COVID?
That's good, but then
Well,
he has to answer my question.
Well, you've got to understand
it's coming.
that in this time period, I came to
transition?
I came to maturity in eschatology. shall we say, okay? And so there's obviously been a major shift there.
Makes me happy.
But look, Apologia didn't close down, and it wasn't because we were smart. It wasn't because we were prophetic. It wasn't because we had presuppositional commitments to the nature of the church, worship, and the Lord's Supper. And so we just looked at the numbers and said, this doesn't make any sense. And okay, we were proven right in that situation. Fine, the Lord was good to us, but it wasn't because we were smart.
Well, I think, and can I add one more thing in there too? It wasn't just the nature of the church; it was the nature of the world. You guys had a robust worldview, so you
and that's interesting because there were other people that didn't come to postmillennial convictions that also stood very firm.
Right.
So I guess I'd be interested to know how did you play it differently, and what lessons have you learned that are different than the ones that those folks have not learned?
Well, I'm not sure which folks you're referring to, but I know I have plenty of friends that when I came out and said, yeah, you know what, this is a consistent way of looking at what the future is to be and how it relates to God's purposes in the world and stuff like that. A lot of them were like, oh, great, now I have to think about this stuff. So in other words, they were already in a situation where they weren't satisfied necessarily with the answers they were already giving, but it was just sort of like, but man, that's a lot of work to do. And it's really uncomfortable and all sorts of, what? It looks, you know what I'm afraid of right now?
You made it burn.
I am afraid your beard's going to get stuck in your microphone.
What's stinging?
It would hurt less than what I'm about to say.
Okay.
But these are the same people who are like the ones who would yell at you for not having your mask up. The same people who went along with everything the government did and they didn't want to, but they did anyway. These are the same people.
You mean the people that I'm talking about?
Yes.
No. These are people who are standing strong, but they sort of felt like they sensed there was an inconsistency
in the post-mill or pre-mill,
in their theology and in their being. There are a lot of pastors who have felt the pressure over the past few years of their people coming to them and looking for answers. And they themselves are searching because we've never faced anything like this before. And so it exposed inconsistencies in the entire theological system. And that has opened it up. Let's be honest. There are certain people who have been listened to over the past couple of years that weren't being listened to nearly as much in the years before that. And so there's an opening here, and it's been a positive thing.
I know it's true. I know you're right. This is what is amazing for me. So when I was working at Wretched with Todd Friel, I was there with him. We would argue for 3 or 4 hours a day sometimes about theonomy and God's application.
I can see him doing that.
Yeah, we would do that, and he would tease me and push. And sometimes we'd have Phil Johnson would be there, and then we'd argue about it. And I remember that they used to go and do a show, and I'm a lightweight. These guys are brilliant, man. Great thinkers. And we would have a real argument back and forth and nothing would be settled. Then they would go do a show and have the show and wouldn't let me argue my position and do it all on me, right? But now I'm watching, Grace to You and this Master Seminary and John MacArthur and those guys say
going theonomic,
basically stand up and say, wait a second, there is a difference in the sphere of the sovereignty of the federal government and a difference in what happens with the church, and this one ain't supposed to be engaging me here, like you're pressing in on me. And so I'm looking at them and saying like, wait, that's what the argument that I was making to you 10 years ago. And I'm not mad at the fact that they're seeing it,
right?
But I'm saying
But are they willing to actually follow it through?
But I'm saying it's bigger than just COVID.
Oh, sure it is.
I'm saying that it transcends the idea. So your church stays open, but you have a bunch of people who are trying to work jobs who still have to face vaccination, being forced to be getting vaccinated, people who are trying to just live in the normal world. And it's one thing to open up the church, which you should do. But it's another thing to bring covenant lawsuit against the federal government and say, you can't treat God's people like this. You're a servant of God. You can't act upon people like this.
You asked me what I've learned?
Yeah.
Remember the SEALs?
The Navy SEALs?
The Navy SEALs?
Yep.
And you know who stood with them? There's Apologia.
Apologia did, yeah.
You know that the religious exemption material that they submitted to the government in their materials, you know who wrote it? I did. Now we didn't, say a whole lot about that, but it was Apologia that was working with them behind the scenes, and literally Jeff came back from spending like 12 hours with their leaders, and he's like, I promised that we would provide them with a good statement, and I'm looking at Jeff and Zach,
and you're gonna write it,
and I'm like, and when's this due? This was Friday. It was due on Monday, and I'm looking at them going, is there something else you want to say? So it's like, yeah, would you do that? Yeah, so we did. So the point was, you want to know what I learned? I had to, in a succinct space, express that very relationship between the church and the state from a biblical perspective in regards to medical intervention, et cetera, et cetera. So that was certainly for me, that is not how I would have answered even 5 years ago at all.
Wow. Yeah.
At all. So yeah, that has provided an opportunity for clarity of thought. And I know I've had lots of people contact me. They got their mandate relief because they used that material.
I don't think it's an accident that the social justice movement comes in, exposes that we don't have a biblical understanding of law.
Right.
And then we have COVID that comes in and proves it beyond a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm saying, okay, now let's have a postpartum on what we've learned.
Postmortem.
I do feel a little postpartum though, don't you, James? Oh man,
I've delivered too many babies. But we need to look at this now.
We're gonna meme that one to death.
We are so yes, that will be mean.
Don't do that. Don't listen to Dr. White. But now that this is all over, can we look at it and say, how do we not ever get in this situation again? How do we never do this again? What theology do we have to fix?
Because we know round 3 is coming. Whatever that is,
we need a good really offense. Fast.
You said round 3 is coming.
Really
hey, the best defense is a good offense. We need to learn to play offense.
What's offense?
Well, it's actually getting. We need to realize that the Reformed evangelicals by and large, and Reformed evangelicals produced the chaos that happened. I really believe
facts.
I believe that we produced the environment in which you could have these crazy Black Lives Matter riots. We produced the environment in which you could have people going woke. Right, I've said this a number of times, but you have a lot of guys that love Jesus that wanted to go change the city, they wanted to go change things. You had certain kind of dispensationalist instincts from others that said you shouldn't be out there anyways. Don't go out there. Gospel's got nothing to do without that out there, and so they went woke. We produced these kind of things, and so just because you birthed the baby and it was something you didn't like. You rejected it hard.
You had postpartum.
Following the postpartum.
staying with the motif.
Thank you for saving me.
You're welcome. So, okay, just because that's gone, what are you going to do now, right? I believe that we're going to face 7 more demons, more wicked than intersectionality. And right now, even the people that stood strong, I'm talking about conservative, Reformed evangelicals, the people that stood strong, what are they doing? Well, they're sweeping the house. And they're garnishing the house, if you don't replace this, if you don't deal with the underlying doctrines that were there, law is one, lordship of Jesus Christ is another. You need a robust Kuyperianism going
Offices.
on. That's another one. There's
a whole, spheres.
This sphere sovereignty. This whole issue of creator-creature distinction is one, and actually, I think Peter Jones' twoism is remarkably helpful here. Eschatology is one. Understanding what does it mean that God does deal with corporate entities. What are those corporate entities, and how does God deal with them? There's a host of doctrines that we need to deal with, and if we don't actually, as the church, teach those doctrines, believe those doctrines, embody those things, then we're going to be up the creek.
There's a lot. Why is eschatology so important? Because I remember 15, 20 years ago, there was eschatology was looking like, you know what? It's just out there. It's okay.
Secondary doctrine.
It's not a big deal at all. But the more that I've come to understand eschatology, I'm finding that the eschatology is directly connected to the gospel.
Yep.
Directly connected to you agree,
certain forms of it are. But see, so that's why I became postmillennial, is because I realized I had been putting it off on the side. I had been treated like that way, and it was wrong. My entire adult life in ministry, I did that. And then I came to realize when you look at Psalm 2, Psalm 110, Isaiah 42, 1 Corinthians 15, you see that it's all tied into the entire purpose of the triune God. Right. Then you can't have it as something that's over there. It's actually essential to this entire definition here. Right. It makes a huge, huge difference. But you don't want my sermon as to what we really need to be doing now.
I do. That's exactly why we're doing this.
You don't. I'm going to tell you because
you're going to make me beg.
Because
what do we got to do here? Offer. Everybody grab your wallets.
Because fundamentally, I've been preaching this to myself for a long, long time. Every time I think about the difficult times that could come and the challenges that could come, what is the only? And I think I've even told you last time we were on. What is the only power that the world has over any one of us? is how much we love the things of the world. So why is it that we can't get all the Christians to pull together and do the right thing? Because we want our stuff, and we want our comforts, and we want our houses, and our full bellies.
The pleasures of Egypt.
All the pleasures of Egypt.
Oh,
And we've forgotten the clear, simple statement of Scripture: if you love the things of the world, the love of the Father is not in you. And so the power they have over us is to threaten our full bellies and our consistency of life and our nice cars and our comforts and our bank accounts and our retirements and things like that. And as long as we still love those things, we'll not get anywhere.
And that's something that
we'll not get anywhere.
That applies especially to Christians by and large, and a ton of our leadership. There was a time when you could get some things of the world if you were kind of semi woke, semi intersectionality, right? And then there was a strong movement that just blasted that thing into oblivion, where if you were a leader of some kind of institution, some kind of organization, it then became very disadvantageous to be for those things. If you were going to keep the things that you wanted to keep, you now had to be anti-woke. I wrote this somewhere, but that Eric Mason wrote his book Woke Church and made that hot seller, right? And now you could sell a lot of copies of anti-woke church.
Yeah,
right?
you could make a lot of money off anti-woke.
Right.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of people.
It would sell like hotcakes, right?
Even Kevin DeYoung just came out and anti-woke now. Thanks, Kevin.
Okay. But here's what I'm saying. There are certain doctrines and certain practices. There's a certain philosophy of ministry. There's a certain way of Christian living. There's certain decisions that many fathers and mothers, I think, all over the nation right now, Christian fathers and mothers are trying to make. Where should I be? What should I do? I'm seeing certain things in the Bible. And to follow what you're seeing, to follow Revelation, will be terribly costly. It will be terribly costly. You're going to lose things, right? And that's going to be more than just saying I'm against social justice. And so to your point, you're dead right, James. It's going to take courage to say, this is what God's revealed, and I'm going to follow what God's revealed, even if it's going to be very, very painful and very, very costly.
So say I've already assessed that situation and I'm in. Now what? Now what? I'm in. I think a lot of Christians have already decided that who are the ones who I'm seeing now are saying, okay, I never want that again. All right, Lord. Okay, 1 Corinthians 10, I get it. I don't want to be like those folks who tempted the Lord in the wilderness and he killed them. I don't want to be like them. I'm seeing that was close the last 3 years.
Yeah,
so now what?
I can tell you exactly what you're going to need to do. You're going to need to find a Christian community that is committed to the kind of doctrines and practice that we've been talking about in this very place. And I'm not saying that you need to leave where you're at. You either need to build it where you're at, or you need to find other Christians that are doing it and go among them. If you don't deal with the root, you're not going to get the fruit. You simply are not going to be able to paste the apples onto this tree. If you remove the organ and demand the function, you're not going to get anything. You have to have the right ingredients in the kitchen. So a ministry like Apologia down there and all the work that they're doing, what's going on right here in Moscow, Vodi Bakum, Vodi Bakum going to Zambia. Think about that for a moment. Here is this major figure, full of wisdom, gets it, understands it, and he's like, well, you're missing so many ingredients here. I'm going to go over to Zambia where I can build it, because you actually don't have what you need here in the kitchen to do what needs to be done in this moment. So for all of these families, you're seeing doctrines, you're seeing truths, you're reading the signs of the times. You have to be willing to actually follow it. Don't just follow it in your head. Don't just follow it in heaven. Do it. So where are the people that believe the same things as you? Get together with them and actually live out the principles that you're getting from listening to Fight, Laugh, Feast. I talk to people all the time about this. And I've had other leaders tell me they're at the Fight, Laugh, Feast, and like, some of these people are going to be stuck. Some of these people are getting resources. They're getting an ethos. They're getting an aroma of things.
But then they go home, there's nothing there.
They go home and it's not there. Right. And they have families.
And you can't get it online either, by the way.
That's right. You can't get it online. Yeah.
And so they're looking around and they're thinking, what do I do? I have this hope, and I have a hope now for my children. But what's the pathway? And they see, maybe that's some doctrinal differences. Maybe that's some philosophy differences. Maybe that's just we're going to live in a different way. And you've got to actually have have the courage to face up to that Red Sea and say God's going to open it up.
Yeah.
You can't remember Lot's wife is what I would tell a lot of people that have tapped into so many good resources, Apology in Moscow, all of that. Remember Lot's wife. You have to follow it and live it out. You have to find the other saints and do it. There's no way to short circuit this kind of thing.
Doc?
I think we're called to, one of the things that we don't want to do is actually really present our lives as a living sacrifice to God. And we don't want to do that in the real.
It's hard work.
It's hard work. It's real
work.
tangible. So I agree with you about community, finding good communities, all that. But the what does it mean to present your life as a living sacrifice before the Lord here and now? Knowing
Where you're at.
where you at as a dad, where you at as a mother, where you at as a community person in your community. We don't want to go through the hard work of actually dying and letting God return to us something more glorified in what we need to be doing. And that should come out so practically in our lives. And that's why I'd say, kind of this past 10 years, no one really wanted to present their lives as a living sacrifice in the church. They didn't want to have the uncomfortable conversations with each other. They didn't want to have the uncomfortable disagreements with each other.
The spirit wasn't gone, but the fact of the matter is God has providentially brought things into our lives as the church as a whole to cause us to recognize the sinfulness of sloth, of friendship with the world, of the myth of neutrality, all of these things. And I think I'm the only person at the table that is a grandfather. Am I correct about that?
You better be.
That's true.
Yes.
Well, excuse me.
I know how old our kids are. I'm just saying.
Give us some time. Give us some time.
Just checking.
It wasn't on you. That was about us.
Well, yeah, because I'm coming this coming June, just a matter of weeks. My wife and I have been married for 40 years.
Man, praise God.
And when you have grandkids, it changes everything.
Yeah.
Changes it. Getting married, that's the first big maturity step.
That's a big one.
Kids,
You don't know what you're doing.
good grief. You got to change those diapers at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
Big maturity
Baptizing
thing.
them,
I have actually baptized 2 of my grandkids on faith, just
Could've
like the
did it
New Testament
earlier.
says. But anyways, and then when your babies have babies, all of a sudden you find yourself in that scene in The Lion King, with the circle of life. You start seeing beyond just you, and that you're part of something much bigger. You're looking ahead and you're looking behind. You're thinking about your grandparents. Now you're thinking about your great-grandchildren down the other direction. And that has been the biggest change for me. And so when you say, what should you be doing? Well, one of the biggest things is, first of all, did I sow into my own children in such a way that they are going to be passing this on as a precious gift to their children? And I'm just Summer's dad, so you know that at least there's that element that's already there, and she's doing a wonderful job as a homeschooling mom and everything else she's doing. It's wonderful. But then you look at those kids, and the state comes for them. I'm the first one putting myself 6 feet under, stopping that from happening.
Right,
You better
right.
believe it. You got to do it.
And sowing in that way requires an eschatological hope.
Right.
And the threat is, because of how tumultuous things have been, the tendency, I think, for the older generation, maybe still watching their Fox News, younger generation, they're watching their Daily Wire, or they're watching Cross Politic. They're seeing what's happening, but then they feel the tyranny of the urgent times infinity, right? I'm so stressed out. I've got a hope in man. If I can just get the right man elected, I'll go spend my whole life trying to do that. And you're neglecting these children that are right in front of you, or your children's children to 1,000 generations. Right? You see, you're not actually fearing God and doing the daily work you need to do to sow in. That takes faith.
Yeah,
That
you're not going to be
faith.
around much longer to do much, but they are. So where's the real profitable place to be working?
There's another thing that's a perception. I can't talk. You guys got me.
Postpartum.
That's what happens. When Dr. White shows up, I get nervous, man. It's just a thing. I know. Anyway,
So nervous you have babies.
A presuppositional thought here, though, is that you got to remember that the kingdom of God is a real place. The gospel accomplished something really in time and space.
Yeah.
And these kings that are ruling now, they have a kingdom over them, and they're only sitting in representatives of God's kingdom that is actually moving here and now.
How many of them have ever heard a serious Christian prophetic warning to them that made it wasn't done
Come
by
on now.
someone with their hair on fire,
Right.
you know, not wearing any clothes or something, have heard a serious prophetic proclamation to them that you in your position will be judged by King Jesus.
Yes.
And your life is not going to last forever. It's right around the corner.
Yeah.
We are afraid to do that. My generation would not do that.
Right.
Well, because that's we're faithless. We don't think that God's kingdom is actually ruling and reigning right now.
Well, on the kingdom point, to jump in, I mean, you talk about a number of doctrines, and I tried to list as many as popped in my mind, but kingdom is another one. I would say, let the reader understand, listening. You pray this every Sunday, so spend a moment, spend more than a moment, considering what it means that the Lord's Prayer says, your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven.
Yep.
So you said something that had tons of doctrinal, glacier underneath of it, and that's another doctrine that needs consideration.
That's it.
Just cut them off right there. Cut them off at that glacier.
You don't have your earplugs in, but you might want to close your ears. If you're single, get married. If you're married, have kids. And if you have kids, go baptize them. Until next week, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. Go fight, laugh, and feast. This is Cross Politics. You believe in baptizing kids too, because you've done it, right? Summer's baptized, right? Yeah. Your kids are baptized, right? Grandkids being baptized.
Lord was gracious to them, and they had faith, and so we followed the
We're just a
Bible.
little earlier.
When tyrants take over, what's the first thing they do? Disarm. It happened in Russia, China, Germany, and most recently, Afghanistan. Why? Because disarmed people are easier to control. And over the last century and a half, American tyrants have been carrying out a slow, methodical disarmament that no one is talking about. State education. Tyrants know that education is warfare. Our rulers have a vested interest in making you totally harmless. They've got big plans and they don't want you getting in the way. Think about it. Would you rather fight an army decked out with high-powered rifles or a bunch of dinky water pistols? They know that if you can think critically, you're a threat. At New St. Andrews College, we want to graduate men and women who are dangerous. Dangerous to the world, dangerous to the principalities and powers, dangerous to spiritual wickedness in high places. Education can either arm you or disarm you. It can make you a threat or make you a useful idiot. So, where you get that education counts. Click the link to apply to New St. Andrews College today.